Everyone quotes power, but very few understand it. You've heard the name Niccolò Machiavelli thrown around like a warning. Manipulative, ruthless, dangerous. But what if the world misunderstood him? What if Machiavelli wasn't teaching evil, but survival in a world that rewards illusion over honesty? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't always respect kindness, but they always respect power. This is why Machiavelli's ideas are trending again. In an era of social media personas, fake loyalty, and silent competition, his philosophy feels more relevant than ever. He didn't describe a fantasy world where goodness wins automatically. He described reality, a world where perception shapes truth and strategy shapes destiny. Machiavelli believed humans are driven by fear, desire, and self-interest, not because they're evil, but because they're human. When circumstances change, loyalty shifts. When power dynamics change, relationships change. And when survival is threatened, morality becomes negotiable. This perspective sounds dark, but it's brutally honest. Imagine trusting someone completely, only to realize their loyalty depended on convenience. Imagine being kind, only to be overlooked while louder personalities dominated the room. Imagine playing fair in a system designed for strategy. These experiences push people toward Machiavellian thinking, not out of cruelty but out of awakening. Awareness changes how you move through the world. One of Machiavelli's most viral ideas is simple yet controversial. It's safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. This doesn't mean becoming terrifying or abusive. It means understanding that love is fragile. Love depends on emotion, and emotions fluctuate. Fear, however, creates stability because it is tied to consequence. But modern interpretation requires nuance. Today, fear doesn't mean intimidation. It means respect for boundaries, consistency, and unpredictability. When people know you won't tolerate disrespect, won't betray yourself for approval, and won't react impulsively, they treat you differently. That quiet firmness becomes psychological authority. Authority without loudness is magnetic. Machiavelli also emphasized perception. He understood that people rarely see your intentions, they see your image. Reputation becomes social currency. You may be kind, intelligent, and capable, but if your image communicates weakness, others respond accordingly. Conversely, someone average with a confident image often receives opportunities and influence. This doesn't mean becoming fake. It means understanding that visibility and perception shape reality. Social media amplified this truth. Millions craft digital identities carefully curated for admiration. But Machiavelli would argue that image isn't deception, it's strategy. The key isn't lying about who you are. It's deciding which parts of yourself the world sees first. Control your narrative, or someone else will. Another powerful Machiavellian insight is emotional restraint. He believed leaders fail not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack emotional control. Anger reveals insecurity. Desperation reveals dependency. Oversharing reveals vulnerability. Emotional leaks provide leverage. In today's context, emotional discipline is rare. People react instantly to comments, messages, and conflicts. They chase validation, defend ego, and overshare personal struggles online. The Machiavellian mindset encourages pause, observation before reaction, strategy before expression, silence before impulsivity. Silence can be louder than explanation. When you don't react immediately, others fill the gap with assumptions. Some perceive confidence, others perceive mystery. But almost everyone pays attention. Emotional unpredictability creates intrigue, and intrigue often leads to influence. Influence is quieter than control. Machiavelli didn't advocate constant manipulation. He advocated understanding human nature so you're not manipulated yourself. Recognizing flattery, guilt tactics, and subtle power plays protects autonomy. Awareness becomes defense. Think about workplace dynamics. Promotions aren't always about competence. Friendships aren't always about loyalty. Group conversations often involve subtle dominance contests. Machiavelli simply exposed these realities, encouraging strategic awareness rather than naive participation. Strategic awareness doesn't eliminate kindness, it refines it. You become kind selectively, trusting gradually, and investing emotionally with intention. Instead of giving everyone equal access to your energy, you observe consistency. This selectivity isn't cold, it's self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of power. Another trending Machiavellian principle is adaptability. Circumstances change rapidly. Technology evolves, relationships shift, opportunities appear and disappear. Rigid morality or identity can leave you unprepared. Machiavelli admired individuals who adjusted strategies without losing core purpose. Adaptability isn't hypocrisy, it's survival intelligence. You may act assertive in one environment and reserved in another. Strategic in negotiation, yet empathetic in friendship, observant in conflict, yet expressive in creativity. Flexibility allows you to navigate diverse social landscapes without losing self-awareness, but adaptability requires emotional detachment from ego. Ego resists change because it clings to identity. The Machiavellian mindset encourages questioning self-perception. Are you acting from principle or pride? Are you defending truth or protecting ego? Are you resisting change because it's wrong or because it's uncomfortable? These questions cultivate psychological agility. Agility enhances decision-making. Instead of reacting based on habit, you respond based on context. You evaluate risks, anticipate consequences, and choose actions aligned with long-term positioning rather than short-term emotional satisfaction. Long-term positioning separates influence from impulse. Machiavelli's philosophy also highlights the role of timing. Right action at wrong time fails. Wrong action at right time can succeed. Understanding timing requires patience, observation, and emotional restraint, qualities developed through awareness. Timing affects conversations, opportunities, and conflict resolution. Speaking too early reveals strategy. Speaking too late loses relevance. Acting prematurely creates mistakes. Acting too slowly misses momentum. Machiavellian thinking trains you to sense readiness, the subtle moment when action carries maximum impact. Impact often depends on surprise. Predictable individuals are easy to ignore. Unpredictable individuals attract attention. This unpredictability doesn't mean chaos, it means refusing to fit simplistic expectations. You don't react as anticipated. You don't reveal plans prematurely. You maintain flexibility in behavior. This creates psychological advantage, but Machiavelli also warned against cruelty without purpose. Ruthlessness for ego destroys reputation and trust. Strategic firmness, however, can preserve stability. The distinction lies in intention, acting to protect autonomy versus acting to dominate unnecessarily. Modern Machiavellianism emphasizes strategic empathy. Understanding emotions allows you to navigate interactions effectively. You recognize when someone seeks validation, reassurance, or dominance. This awareness guides responses. Sometimes listening builds influence. Sometimes silence diffuses conflict. Sometimes assertiveness prevents exploitation. There is no single formula, only situational awareness. Situational awareness extends beyond individuals to systems. Machiavelli understood institutions, politics, and power structures. Today, these structures exist in corporations, social networks, and communities. Recognizing hierarchies, incentives, and hidden agendas improves navigation within them. Navigation isn't manipulation. It's literacy. You wouldn't enter a game without understanding rules. Social environments are similar. Awareness of power dynamics allows participation without losing authenticity. You choose battles wisely, alliances thoughtfully, and exits strategically. Exit strategy is underrated power. Knowing when to walk away prevents emotional entrapment. Many remain in toxic environments due to fear of uncertainty. Machiavellian awareness encourages independence. If you're not dependent on approval, you can leave without collapse. That freedom shifts power balance instantly. Freedom from desperation is silent authority. Perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of Machiavelli is morality. Critics interpret his realism as endorsement of immorality, but Machiavelli described reality rather than prescribing cruelty. He believed leaders must sometimes choose lesser evils to prevent greater chaos. In personal life, this translates to ethical complexity. You may set boundaries that disappoint others. You may prioritize self-growth over constant availability. You may protect privacy rather than overshare. These choices may appear cold, but often preserve psychological well-being. Psychological well-being enables authentic influence. Influence rooted in insecurity is fragile. Influence rooted in self-awareness is stable. Machiavellian philosophy, when interpreted thoughtfully, becomes a guide for self-mastery rather than manipulation. It encourages understanding power without being consumed by it. Self-mastery is the ultimate Machiavellian victory. You control reactions, emotions, and decisions. You remain aware of manipulation without becoming manipulative. You understand perception without becoming fake. You navigate power dynamics without losing authenticity. This balance defines modern Machiavellianism. It's not about dominating others. It's about refusing to be naive in a complex world. It's about observing human nature without bitterness. It's about protecting autonomy while remaining capable of connection. And this is why Machiavelli feels viral today. In a world of curated identities and silent competition, people crave clarity. They seek frameworks that explain why kindness sometimes fails, why perception shapes opportunity, and why emotional discipline enhances influence. Machiavelli provides uncomfortable answers, but uncomfortable answers often lead to growth. Growth begins when illusions dissolve. When you stop expecting fairness automatically and start creating opportunity intentionally. When you stop chasing approval and start building self-respect. When you stop reacting impulsively and start responding strategically. Strategic living isn't manipulation, it's awareness in action. So the next time you hear Machiavelli's name associated with darkness, remember this: darkness isn't always evil. Sometimes it's simply the absence of illusion. And in that absence, clarity emerges. Clarity about people, clarity about power, clarity about yourself. Because Machiavelli's greatest lesson wasn't about controlling others. It was about understanding the game deeply enough that you never lose yourself playing it. And once you understand the game, you don't need to fear power anymore. You learn to carry it quietly. But carrying power quietly comes with a hidden cost: awareness. The moment you start seeing power dynamics clearly, ordinary interactions feel different. Conversations are no longer just words, they're signals. Compliments feel layered, silence feels intentional. Even casual jokes sometimes reveal subtle hierarchies. You begin to notice who leads conversations and who follows, who interrupts and who apologizes, who seeks approval and who commands attention without asking. This awareness can feel isolating at first, because once you see these patterns, you can't return to naive participation. You realize that many interactions are less about truth and more about positioning. Positioning determines influence long before authority appears. In social groups, the most influential person isn't always the loudest or the smartest. It's often the one who controls emotional atmosphere, the one who remains calm in tension, speaks selectively, and reacts unpredictably. This emotional stability creates gravity. People gravitate toward those who seem internally anchored. Machiavellian awareness trains you to become that anchor. You stop chasing attention and start observing where attention flows. You notice how confidence, even when quiet, shapes perception. You see how people subconsciously mirror strong emotional presence. This mirroring creates subtle influence without direct effort. Influence without effort feels almost paradoxical, but it comes from internal alignment. When your self-perception isn't dependent on external validation, your behavior changes naturally. You speak slower, listen deeper, and react less impulsively. Others sense this stability even if they can't articulate it, and sensing stability makes people curious. Curiosity is the doorway to influence. When people can't easily categorize you, they pay attention. When your reactions aren't predictable, they watch more closely. When your silence carries comfort instead of insecurity, it creates psychological intrigue. Intrigue is often more powerful than approval. Approval is temporary and fragile. Intrigue invites exploration. It encourages others to invest attention voluntarily, rather than offering it out of obligation. This voluntary attention becomes a form of soft power, subtle yet impactful. But Machiavellian thinking also warns against becoming consumed by power itself. Power, when pursued for ego, becomes addictive. You start measuring worth through influence, viewing relationships as strategy, and interpreting vulnerability as weakness. This path leads to emotional detachment so extreme that connection feels transactional. True Machiavellian wisdom lies in restraint. Restraint ensures that awareness enhances life rather than hardens it. You understand manipulation, but don't default to it. You recognize power, but don't obsess over control. You observe human flaws without losing compassion for human struggle. Compassion, surprisingly, strengthens influence. People trust those who understand their emotions without exploiting them. Strategic empathy allows you to navigate conflicts calmly, offer support without emotional exhaustion, and communicate boundaries without hostility. This balance creates respect that isn't forced. It's earned. Earned respect lasts longer than fear. Fear creates obedience, but often breeds resentment. Respect, however, creates voluntary cooperation. Machiavellian awareness helps you distinguish between the two. You aim not to intimidate, but to establish presence strong enough that others naturally acknowledge boundaries. Boundaries are invisible demonstrations of self-worth. When you don't tolerate disrespect, don't overshare prematurely, and don't compromise values for approval, people adjust their behavior. Some step closer with genuine interest. Others step back because access is no longer easy. Both outcomes are beneficial. Filtering people isn't rejection, it's alignment. Alignment ensures your environment supports growth rather than drains energy. Machiavellian awareness teaches that not every relationship deserves equal emotional investment. Selectivity protects mental clarity and prevents emotional overextension. Overextension often leads to resentment. You give too much, expect reciprocity, and feel disappointed when reality doesn't match expectation. Machiavellian thinking dissolves this cycle by reframing generosity as choice rather than obligation. You give because you want to, not because you hope for return. Expectation-free generosity feels lighter. It also protects autonomy. When your kindness isn't tied to outcome, manipulation loses leverage. Guilt tactics, emotional pressure, and subtle coercion become ineffective because your actions stem from self-awareness rather than external approval. Self-awareness transforms conflict as well. Instead of reacting defensively, you analyze context. Is this disagreement about values, ego, or misunderstanding? Is the other person seeking truth, validation, or dominance? Understanding intent shapes response. Sometimes silence diffuses conflict faster than argument. Sometimes humor softens tension. Sometimes directness prevents escalation. Situational response reflects psychological agility, a core Machiavellian skill. Agility also applies to ambition. Machiavelli emphasized that fortune favors the prepared but punishes the passive. Opportunities rarely arrive announced. They appear disguised as risk, uncertainty, or inconvenience. Awareness helps you recognize potential where others see discomfort. Comfort zones often conceal stagnation. The Machiavellian mindset encourages calculated risk, not reckless leaps, but thoughtful experimentation. You assess consequences, anticipate challenges, and act with intention. Even failure becomes information rather than identity. Information fuels growth. Every setback reveals patterns in behavior, decision-making, and environment. Instead of internalizing failure as personal inadequacy, you treat it as strategic feedback. This reframing preserves confidence while refining future action. Confidence built on reflection becomes resilient. Resilient confidence doesn't crumble under criticism or rejection. It adapts, it learns, it persists without becoming rigid. Machiavellian awareness supports this resilience by separating self-worth from temporary outcomes. You are not your success. You are not your failure. You are the strategist navigating both. This perspective reduces emotional volatility. Highs feel motivating but not intoxicating. Lows feel challenging but not devastating. Emotional equilibrium creates clarity, and clarity enhances decision-making. Decision-making ultimately shapes destiny more than intention ever could. Many people intend growth but avoid discomfort. They desire change but fear uncertainty. Machiavellian awareness exposes this contradiction. Growth requires confrontation with fear, habit, and illusion. Solitude often becomes the environment where this confrontation occurs. In solitude, you meet yourself without distraction. You question motives, revisit memories, and evaluate beliefs inherited rather than chosen. This introspection can feel unsettling, but it creates authenticity. You stop living according to external scripts and start designing personal strategy. Personal strategy isn't manipulation of life, it's intentional living. You decide what matters, where energy flows, and how identity evolves. You acknowledge power dynamics without becoming cynical. You engage socially without losing independence. You pursue ambition without sacrificing emotional integrity. Integrity anchors Machiavellian awareness. Without integrity, strategy becomes deception. Without awareness, integrity becomes naivete. The balance between both creates psychological maturity, the ability to see the world clearly while acting authentically within it. This maturity transforms loneliness as well. Loneliness stops feeling like exclusion and starts feeling like space. Space for thinking deeply, observing quietly, and evolving intentionally. You no longer fear being alone because solitude becomes a resource rather than punishment. Resourceful solitude fuels creativity, insight, and emotional independence. Independence, however, doesn't eliminate desire for connection. Machiavellian awareness simply ensures that connection is chosen consciously. You seek relationships that respect autonomy, conversations that encourage authenticity, and environments that support growth. Quality replaces quantity. Fewer connections, but deeper ones. Less noise, more meaning. Less performance, more presence. This shift often surprises people who associate Machiavellian thinking with emotional coldness. In reality, thoughtful Machiavellianism refines connection rather than rejecting it. You connect without losing yourself. This is perhaps the most viral lesson hidden within Machiavelli's philosophy. The world may reward image, strategy, and power, but lasting fulfillment still depends on self-awareness. Strategy without self-awareness leads to emptiness. Awareness without strategy leads to vulnerability. Integration creates balance. You move strategically, yet remain emotionally conscious. You understand perception, yet value authenticity. You observe power dynamics, yet prioritize inner stability. This integration allows you to navigate complexity without losing simplicity of self. And simplicity, ironically, is the ultimate power.